Good evening, friends. First of all, I would like to thank the Canadian Peace Alliance for inviting me to this gathering tonight to share with you as a mother of a former, the experience of, as a mother of a former member of the Canadian Forces. It was 3 years ago when I first speak about the war here in Toronto and against the war in Afghanistan and elsewhere. As we move from 2010 to this period, we're seeing soldiers dying, not because of combat, but because of PTSD. But first of all, it was coincidental. While traveling this morning, I was on a train going to work. There was an ad inside the train from the Canadian Forces, and it caught my eyes. It was an ad showing two women in uniform with quotes from both, and at the end in bold letters saying, "Join us." The first quote came from a certain Captain Georgian Mink, which says, "I love the fact that I get to be a role model." And the second quote was from Corporal Jessica Walker, which says, "I always feel needed here." These words reverberated in my mind repeatedly all the way to my stop, which is Islington. In the summer of 2010, a large contingent of young men and women belonging to military units such as the Scottish Highlanders, Princess of Wales' own regiment, and the largest, the Royal Regiment of Canada, left for Afghanistan to take up a 6-month tour of duty in the volatile province of Kandahar. My son, who just finished a month-long military training in the vast desert of California, was among them. Unlike other deployments in the past years by Canadian forces in Afghanistan, where they saw fierce combat that resulted in casualties and severe injuries to our soldiers, my son and his regiment witnessed and encountered less engagement with the Taliban. But even then, they all suffered the high degree of stress and tension, heightened mental alertness, vigilance, and fatigue associated with conflict and violence that prevails in the country. The Royal Regiment's tour ended in January 2011, where they were replaced by soldiers from Valcartier in Quebec. Canada's involvement in the long-running Afghan war does not only involve military personnel, but also money, equipment, firepower, airplanes and helicopters, including cargo planes, and compensation for the salary of the Afghan army. To sum it up, as a close ally of an empire that is crumbling, Canada's involvement in the war runs into billions of dollars. When our sons and daughters came home in 2011, little did they know that this administration will start cutting back the veterans' benefits available to our service members.
Shame.
What the Harper administration did first thing was to present a new charter reducing our service members' pension in favor of one-time lump sum payments. This new charter was never presented to Canadians before being implemented. As what Crystal said, It's purely unilateral. This method is divisive as it marginalized Afghan veterans from World War II veterans in a way that World War veterans are, quote and unquote, financially secured compared to Afghan veterans. Secondly, the Harper administration reduced desk or administrative jobs held by veterans suffering from various forms of physical disabilities as a result of deployment. This second blow to Afghan war veterans infuriated my son, resulting in his resignation from the military and his decision to complete his university studies. The fallout from all the cutbacks this administration has implemented is slowly affecting veterans, especially those who have young families to support. The post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, which was very common among the U.S. Vietnam War veterans, has afflicted our soldiers, starting from those who were deployed in the Balkan War as UN peacekeepers. PTSD has now increased and is affecting the Afghan veterans, as shown by the numbers of soldiers who have taken their own lives. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation cited government figures which show 22 Canadian soldiers committed suicide in 2011, 13 in 2012, and 7 in 2013, which I'm not sure of whether it's really 7 because the government doesn't tell the truth. The most disturbing was the case of 4 soldiers who took their lives in a single week last November, and they are Master Corporal Sylvain, it's a French name. The 4th soldier,
Sylvain Lalièvre.
The 4th soldier, whose body was found in Chandler, Quebec on a Monday, was 46 years old. His death comes after 3 others across Canada were determined to be the result of suicide and linked to PTSD. All 4 soldiers had served tours in Afghanistan. On Wednesday that week, the body of Warrant Officer Michael McNeil was found at a military base in Kampitawawa, north of the capital city of Ottawa. A day earlier, Master Corporal William Elliott died in his home near Canadian Forces Base in Shiloh, southwestern Manitoba, and Master Bombardier Travis Halmrust died in Lethbridge, Alberta Hospital after a suicide attempt. On December 25, which is Christmas Day, retired Corporal Leona McEachern died in the Trans-Canada Highway near Calgary when she drove her car into an oncoming truck. Her husband, Cab McEachern, said his 51-year-old wife was being treated for PTSD and was allowed to leave a treatment facility for Christmas. Leona left a note for the family saying that her death was a final desperate act as a result of, quote-unquote, protracted battles with Veterans Affairs over medical benefits for dental work she received in the late 1980s while stationed in Germany. CTV confirmed that government sources confirmed another soldier committed suicide last week at Alberta's Suffield, but provided no details of the death. The most recent death, which hit the Royal Regiment hard, including my son and his colleagues who were with him in Afghanistan in 2010, was the suicide of Corporal Camilo Sanhueza Martinez, who left behind a wife, Chelsea, and a 3-month-old daughter, Alessandra. Seeing the family's grief last week was heartbreaking, and for Harper to say that it's irresponsible to assert that services are not available or that jobs will be lost as a result of coming forward runs hollow to those who knew the real score. For example, on December 4, 2013, Rob Nicholson, the defense minister, urged all struggling soldiers to seek help when he said, quote, "I want to remind those who may be going through difficult times that you are not alone and there is support available to get you through this. We all have a role to play in reaching out to those who are hurting and encourage them to get help." A few weeks after this statement, retired Corporal Leona McEachern took her own life, followed by Corporal Camilo Sanhueza Martinez. When Camilo's death was reported to the media, the government's helpline, the 1-800 number, mentioned that they have not received calls requesting for help. Who would call for help when the stigma of coming forward is very much against the core of military training and the image that a soldier is resilient and tough? Who would come forward when PTSD would label soldiers unfit for duty and their job is on the line? Who would come forward when the government provides inadequate and some substandard help to those who are suffering mentally? The Harper government should and must understand that these young men and women who went to conflicts under the banner of the Canadian Forces risk and sacrifice their lives. As a consequence, they deserve to be treated with respect and care. As some of them are suffering from mental illness, as we know now, it is time for the government to show compassion by caring and providing them with all the help they need to heal physically and mentally. As a mother of a former soldier, the $490 billion allocated to Canada's first defense strategy should be reallocated to the following. 1, providing medical care for injured, disabled soldiers, as well as those suffering with brain injury, as what the Canadian military termed PTSD. 2, increasing provincial medical care funding to accommodate the needs of injured, disabled soldiers and those suffering from brain injury, and not for the military to be inclusive when it comes to treating soldiers, especially those with brain injury. Number 3, spending money to educate family members regarding brain injury or PTSD, and include it in the military's handbook so that families are able to understand and respond appropriately, since they are the closest kin of the soldiers. And this is what I've been through. When my son signed up and was about to deploy, we were given handbooks, but there was no discussion, there was nothing there about PTSD. Number 4, increasing to its full capacity or maybe more, the hiring of mental health professionals to meet the needs of soldiers suffering with brain injury. And number 5, close coordination between different agencies such as the military, hospitals, and mental health professionals so that there is no disconnect and nothing falls in the cracks of the government's bureaucratic system. In the words of Corporal Jessica Walker, I always feel needed here. This is how Camilo Sanhueza Martinez felt when he made the choice to stay in the military, like countless others who remained enlisted. These are men and women who risk their lives, and they are the same men and women who will respond when called to serve our country again. These are men and women capable of risking their lives and giving the ultimate sacrifice for their love of country and fellow Canadians. Thank you.